We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
Hey guys, it is Tristan with Nerdouts Newsstand, and today on Ask the Experts, I am so excited to have Jeremy Adams here with me, writer of The Flash, and probably a lot of stuff you've seen from Mortal Kombat to Soul of the Dragon. I am in love with this Flash run, so I may fangirl out a little bit, but how are you today,
I'm
Jeremy?
doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited. I really appreciate your time. But the first question I
Yes.
always ask everyone,
Mhm.
what got you interested in comic books?
Um, so this is my dad drew some comics for DC when I was a little kid, and only like a couple for Ghosts. There's a book called Ghosts, and I guess in the '80s he did some Captain Atom, and so I don't think I knew how much he hadn't done that many, but it was like always around, right? Like superheroes and comic books were always around. So I think when my parents got divorced, there was a little bit of I knew my dad was into comics, and I think there was a point of connection. Like the more,
Mhm.
if I was reading, and then of course I love them and I love superheroes. So there was an element of there was just that shared point of interest that helped us communicate over the years. And I fell in love with it as a little kid. I don't remember a time pre-comic.
Right?
Yeah,
I love it. Um, as far as like I said, we got to talk about this Flash run.
yeah.
I'm so glad you're bringing back like fun to Flash, and that sounds weird, but as amazing as Williamson's run was, it was all about Barry, right?
Right.
And for a lot of people, Wally is their Flash. He is the one, that expanded upon the lore. He's the one they think about when they think about the Flash.
Right. Right. I agree.
And why do you think that is? Do you think that Barry still has a place in your stories, or is it Wally's show now?
I absolutely believe that Barry has a place. Williamson is kind of doing his own thing with Barry right now. At the minute they say, "Hey, Jeremy, you can have Barry," then I would happily fold them all together. My goal is I want to make such an entertaining book, an adventurous book, and a book that anybody could read, so that I want it to sell really well, so that I could go, "Hey, I want a Flash family book," or like, can I
I
do it
love it.
twice? Or can I do twice a month? It would be cool to have rotating, characters or whatever. Because I think you can't have the Flash without Barry, just like you can't have the Flash without Jay Garrick. There's some of
Yeah.
those characters. I think for Wally, for me, it was like, hey, do you have any ideas for the Flash? And I was like, yes, I have a ton. Barry's going to go over and do this thing. And it's me going, okay, great. I get Wally. And especially the first blink of an eye run, it was a way for me to kind of find the voice of Wally that I wanted to tell the story to. And so, him jumping into different speedsters and him kind of facing the elephant in the room that's Heroes in Crisis, and like all that stuff was a way for me to just kind of like grab a hold of this character and then start telling the stories I want to tell. And it is, like you said, it's just a fun, kind of wholesome adventure superhero book, and people are kind of calling it a throwback, and it's just I'm writing for 10-year-old me. I want to be able to read this and go, oh my gosh, that was so exciting. Here's this guy that can go super fast, but what does that mean? He can go back in time and go to different dimensions. He can fight this person. But what makes Wally different is, as Barry is a little more analytical, Wally is a little more empathetic, and he's a little more goes with his gut, because he's been doing this since he was a little kid, essentially. So anyways, I've grown to fall in love with Barry. I mean, with Wally and his family, especially because Wally's married with 2 kids. I'm married with 2 kids. There's a lot of similarities between juggling lives and bills and all that stuff. So it's been really fun.
I love that a lot of your run so far at least feels like it's very familial. You
Yeah.
involve everybody. And I think that's really like I love it. I love the relationships, how you do it. But one thing in the last issue, so that would be 775,
Yeah.
you talked about how when I The steak thing that was in the ground. I
Yeah,
can't think what it
the
was
glaive.
called.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. It's like the glaive, and Wally's like the glaive. What's that mean? Yeah.
Well, but he said it didn't make him angry.
Yeah.
Are you going to explore that more? Because I love that idea that he has gone through the hills, the ups and downs, everything. And he's almost been kind of, omitted his anger. Is that something that you want to kind of go through?
Yes. It is not as clear cut as that, but yes, there's a very specific reason. And it is part of kind of where I see Wally now, that he has gone through. I don't know, a lot of people can relate to this, but I definitely can relate to this. I've spent a long time trying to break into not just the comic industry but the entertainment industry, and there's been a lot of times where I'm wondering, oh geez, how do I pay the bills this month or whatever. And then when you get beyond that, and you start making a little money or whatever, you realize that even if everything disappeared tomorrow, I've already had the trauma. I've already had the bad stuff. So it becomes less of a burden. And I think with Wally, he's had so much trauma, but right now it's like he has his family, he has his wife. The worst thing has already happened to Wally, and he's come out the other end. So there's this kind of like optimistic streak to him. There's this hopeful streak to him. It's like he's already lived through the worst thing. What could be worse than losing your family and your wife and your kids, and they don't remember you, or they're lost to, a hiccup in the DC timeline. So the fact that he's gotten through it gives him a hopeful edge. But I will say, because of what happens at the end of 77.5, spoilers for whoever, that we know that Eclipso is sending out this kind of like antagonistic spirit to like draw people in to try to move the glaive. It is a twofold thing. It's not only that Wally is naturally predisposed not to have that sort of attitude, but I think there's going to be more that we're going to unravel there, and I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, I love it though. I love that you're diving into that emotion, and it brings depth to the character. And I know a lot of people kind of looked at you as their hero there for a while when you with the Heroes in Crisis. Like kind of retcon or explanation. That was so well done.
Oh, thank you. One of my favorite things is in comics is like, and this isn't a this is aside from what criticism people may have of Heroes in Crisis. Like I'm not even worried about that, because I think Tom King is an incredible writer. It's more of my favorite stuff in comic books is telling the stories between the stories. I like retcons in a lot of ways. And for me, when I was taking over Wally, I couldn't grasp what makes him heroic if he killed a bunch of people and covered it up. And so I had to kind of wrestle with that, and this is one of the absolute incredible things that you get to do, as long as your editors are okay with it, which sometimes they're not okay with what I want to do, that you get to play with the action figures. At the end of the day, I don't own these characters. I don't own the toy box that they're from. I'm going to have to leave them in good condition when I put them back. But for me, it was really important, because there was a lot of people telling me that we shouldn't address it at all. And I was no, I want to address it, because the whole point is that the Flash moves so fast that there are stories between the other stories. And I think about, for me, like in X-Men, I grew up reading a lot of X-Men, and there was a Dark Phoenix saga, and that was like the craziest thing. Jean Grey dies, and you're like, oh my gosh. And then in the book, like later, Madeline Pryor shows up, and she looks just like Jean Grey. And then they started slowly retconning what had happened, but it blew my mind. I was like, oh no, she wasn't that. She was a clone, and there's a Goblin Queen, and I was like, ah. And so the idea that I can do that too, with little bits of the Flash world and the Flash history. And also, we're kind of getting our bearings in terms of the DC universe, right? Like there's been this kind of like shake up again. We're in the Omniverse, since Mark Waid's run, there's probably had 4 or 5 DC, complete. So there's a little bit of, I get to kind of pick and choose different things from the Flash history and kind of canonize it again. and I'm having a lot of fun doing that. The only thing is, like, one thing Williamson did really well, he had a lot of speedsters in different books, and for me, I want to bring different speedsters in, but I want to give them a spotlight that I can like grab onto, because this is all going to be kind of Wally's book, at least until they tell me differently. But there are a lot of other speedsters. That's why I'm always like, oh man, I hope this sells really good, because I really, really would die. I would just kill to be able to do a Flash family book with Bart and Jay, and maybe an anthology series. I have an idea of what I want the Flash family to do, and I'm trying to implement that. But I would love to be able to do a series where it's not just them passing through. It's giving Liberty Bell and giving these people like real backgrounds and their own lives and their own stories to build it out. Because at the end of the day, I think the Flash could be like the Bat books. It's like there's Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl. It's like, I think we could do that with the Flash. We just, I got to get people excited about the Flash.
And that's exactly what I was gonna say. Make it like the Bat family. There's two characters like I gotta ask about that I absolutely love, speedsters, Just Chambers and Gold Beetle. Are we gonna see them again by chance?
Yes. The Just Chambers, somebody may have dibs on her at the moment, but Gold Beetle for sure.
Awesome. I loved her.
I created her to be this kind of zany, I have 2 daughters, and if I can leave this earth having put more female superheroes in the toy box, then I feel like I have done something. She is one of my favorite things, and obviously I introduced her in Future State Black Adam, and then she appears here, and and even when she's in, during the issue, it's like 769, she talks about all the adventures that she goes on with Wally at different times, and I know what those adventures are. Like, I told my editor, I'm like, listen, you just give me the green light, I'll give you 3 years of stories like now. I know exactly what they are. I know exactly what I want Gold Beetle to do, and I hope I get to do it. I'm super excited. I feel blessed that they're letting me do this. I mean, up until last year, I'd never written a comic book, so this is a new craft for me, but I'm really enjoying it.
You did Black Adam, right? The Future State one.
State Black Adam, yeah, which was
I love how it's paying off now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. With Tim, so Tim's one of my really good friends, and so he had to kind of take the you have young Black Adam showing up because he got de-aged when he went back in time, and that's all playing out in Teen Titans Academy. But it is really fun, and Future State Black Adam was really the first time I got to write a comic book, and I was just jamming everything I could, and I was like, they're never gonna let me do this again. And I even look at it now, like a year later, and I'm like, well, maybe it's a little overstuffed, But and the artist Fernando Passarin, who has been doing, he just did 775. He did the Heroes in Crisis elements of the annual. He is just a fantastic artist, and being a comic book writer, no one really prepared me for the fact that, like, you write these little funny words, and then a couple weeks later, somebody sends you pictures that are so much better than your words. So you're just like, oh my gosh, that's talent. That's a real skill. It's been really neat to see some of that stuff. And wait till the next issue. I'm
so excited.
Is bananas. And I think everybody's like, you can just realize it's bananas and just go with it.
That's crazy to me that was one of your first comics, because I read all of Future State between that and Ram V's Swamp Thing. Those were my 2 favorite stories. Being a new comic book writer, seeing that like DC 1 million pay off, it feels like between you and even Tim Sheridan with the Teen Titans Academy stuff and bringing in a lot of different elements, it's like almost like this weird spider web, right? Where everything eventually pays off. And it's so well crafted. It's kind of amazing. Like your Heatwave 2-parter. Heatwave was never one of my favorite characters. but I got that like tug, on your heart. And it's like, oh, I felt bad for him. It's so weird. Do you have any other plans for any of the rogues? Like any of the Flash rogues?
I have a big idea for the Rogues, and I'm like, please just give me more books, because I just have too many ideas and not enough books. Like, I'm already like, when can I write my next one? Because I'm too far ahead as it is. I do have some ideas for the Rogues. Part of what I've been wanting to do on my run to not only just differentiate it, because the Rogues and the Speedsters, those were such a big part of Williamson's and Jeff John's run, and all that was a big part of those. I want to bring them back, but I want to bring them back in meaningful ways. So I'm very slow and reluctant to do it right away. I definitely want, at the end of the day, I want people to look at my run of Flash and go, man, that was bananas. That was, exciting and crazy that he took the Flash here and he did this and he did that. And then he had a heartfelt moment with his daughter and a heartfelt moment with this. And, I have an idea of what I want to do for the Rogues, but it's hard too, because I'm a logic monster, and I'm like, what's this guy with the boomerang going to do to this guy who can run faster than the speed of light? There's a little of like, okay, I've got to, but it's a challenge as a writer, don't get me wrong. And they've also rehabbed a lot of the Rogues. So a lot of them are not necessarily as bad. And it just depends on other people have those Rogues or other people have plans for some of those Rogues. But for me, I know what, like, right now, 775 kicks off a new arc that's going to be a few issues. And when that ends, my goal is to kind of do the Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, or, X-Files, where it's like we do an arc that's kind of the bigger arc, and then we'll come back and do a couple grounded issues, and then we'll go and do another bigger arc. And next year, there's going to be some big explosive DC stuff happening that Wally is going to be able to tie into a couple times. And then hopefully later next year, I have this like really out there idea that I'm really trying to get my editor to say yes to. Right now, he's not. He's like, no. And I'm like, you've got to, like, please. Because there's a lot of stuff with Linda and the kids that I really, really, he said to me the other day, he goes, I think you like the kids more than you like Wally. I'm like, that's not true. A little bit, not that much,
That's funny. That's the dad in you, though,
yeah,
going
totally.
for the kids.
Totally.
I love it. As far as, so you mentioned a boomerang, and I got to ask, you remember when all those 5G rumors were going around?
Yeah.
Are we going to see, originally it was like, Captain Boomerang's son was going to be the new speedster. Is there any chance of seeing him?
I don't think so. They might have plans with them at a different level, but that's how I got, I don't know if you know this. So the 5G thing is how I got kind of pulled into DC. Dan Didio, I guess, and Bob Harris put like a call out to the DC, like different people in DC and Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. And DC Animation, Warner Brothers Animation, has a really great reputation for doing very faithful adaptations of books and also faithful comic book stories. And so my name got thrown in the mix, and next thing I know, I'm in this boardroom with some other people, and Jim Lee's there, and Dan Didio's running around and talking about 5G, and now we're going to jump ahead. And I was like, oh my gosh, and then he's like, send me, we're going to do pitches. And I did some pitches, and evidently no one liked my pitches, or I don't know what. And then the company, and then they were gone, and the company got bought, and all this stuff happened. And I thought, oh, I missed my chance. And then Tim, actually, my editor, Mike Cotton, was like, oh, I got these names. And Tim's like, oh, Jeremy's great. And so he called me up to do a Black Adam Future State. So I know that 5G morphed into kind of future state. But as far as Captain Boomerang's son, no one has brought it up to me. So I'm so busy with Wally and all his shenanigans. I haven't thought about it.
I wondered about that, because that ended up being such a mess, and then it was changed, and then it was like there was rumors flying. You go into Bleeding Cool, and they had every rumor you could think of. And it was just like I don't know what to believe, but we'll just wait and see when it comes. But I noticed in 775 that when Starbreaker was last used in a major fashion, Dwayne McDuffie revealed that he was an adult sun eater, which never got fully tapped into. Do you plan on having that payoff or doing anything with that?
Not. I mean, other than that, he is an acceptable host for the full power of Eclipso, which is important for what's going to happen. But as far as now that Starbreaker's come back in, and now that Fernando drew him so well, and again, it's one of those characters that just hasn't been that nobody's played with.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that I can bring Starbreaker back in a different capacity at some point, because that's part of the fun for me. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to just play with all the toys, and I want to take the toys that people have forgotten about and play with those toys too. And and it's like Starbreaker was one that I was looking for somebody that would be cool, and there was just something really neat about him. And so it was kind of like out of left field. People were like, "Who is this guy?" It's like, well, he's been around. Like, I didn't make him up, But anyways, yeah. As far as the Sun Eater aspect, we might touch on that in the future, but I don't have any immediate plans.
I wondered about that when I was reading it. It's such a good issue. Hypothetical though.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you get to issue 800, which I'm hoping, okay, yeah. Is it going to be huge? Like, are you going to go all out?
If they would let me do 800, this would be my dream. I'm thinking in my head, well, it's just that it's far out, and I don't listen. This isn't something on the table. This isn't something that I'm talking about. So just, I would hope, I would wish that I could get somebody like Mark Waid and Jeff Johns and Josh Williamson, and all of us do like a story in a big fat book. That would be beyond my dreams. That would be really cool. But also, I don't, that's 20 issues down the road, which is like a little over 2 years. And in my head, I already kind of know where we're going to be, but again, they could let me go tomorrow, like they could be like, the sales aren't what they need to be. And you got to go, and I'll be like, oh, I'll be crying as my fingernails are like holding on, like, don't let me leave.
Please, I want to stay.
I want to stay, please. Yeah. I mean, that's how I am. I'm just like, please give me more books. Give me anything. Fill-ins. I think series. I don't do anything.
I think there's been a couple times when I do a video, I'm like, well, you could bring in Jeremy Adams. Like, when they're talking about, Tinian leaving the Batman. And I'm like, well, why not, keep Tamaki on Detective and put on Adams? Come on now. Like, the DC, listen to me.
You're preaching the gospel.
I know, but
I've got a lot of people saying, oh, you'd be good writing Spider-Man. And what do you think about that? And I'm like, you guys don't understand. I'll do anything. I'm such a huge fanboy, and I've always wanted to write comics, and to get the chance has been like beyond a thrill, and it's like, I don't know. I'm just kind of, and sometimes it doesn't go my way. I mean, the behind the scenes stuff is that sometimes you want to do something and they're not going to let you do it. And sometimes you want to tell a story that they're not going to let you tell. Sometimes they're going to say, hey, we want you to tell this story. And you're like, I'll try, but it's not the story I want to do. So maybe it's not as good. So it's weird because you're playing with people's toys. Some people will be, and I look through reviews and stuff, and it's so funny. There are people that'll be like, oh, I really love this. And the people are like, you should never touch a computer again. You should die. Like they're like terrible people, and it's just like, okay, then you feel miserable. But, you just try to do the best you can. And I'm trying to kind of knock off some bigger ideas. The next issue is kind of a fun idea I wanted to do for a while. And the issue 774 with the father-daughter dance, I wrote that with my daughter. And that was like, life goals. She drew all the monsters and she came up with Dr. Nightmare's name. And
that's so cute.
It was awesome. I took out a whiteboard, we got snacks, and I showed her how I put a story together, and she started coming with ideas, and then I gave her some of the paycheck, which, boy, that might have been a mistake. It was like, I got my every American Girl doll, and I was like, oh gosh, oh man.
That's so cute, though. That's like the best. And I love that. Like, fans and people passionate really do make the best writers, right? Because they love those toys just as much as the consumer.
Yeah. And I do. I mean, when I started getting paid to write, my first credit is on Green Lantern, the animated series. And it's such a good series. But, you know, just suddenly getting into the stuff that when I was a kid, I would be bullied mercilessly for. And now it's popular and it's so great, but it's also so weird.
It is.
You know, like I remember somebody saying, "Oh, I love Star Trek," and I was like, "You didn't say that out loud when I was a kid." You know, like we played D&D and hide from people wanting to throw us in toilets. You know, and so it's been real strange that I'm paid for everything that I was beaten up for back in the day. So
I know it's become so massive. I love Stargirl. It's such a fantastic series. And I'm like, they're hinting at Obsidian in real life in a show. Oh my God, this is happening. Like it's like the best time right now to be a nerd.
It is. I remember when I was watching Smallville and like the JSA showed up and I was like, what? Like
it's so good though.
You know, I was like, I couldn't believe it was happening. And then it was suddenly like, oh, and here's a bunch of shows and here's a bunch of movies. And I was like, this is insane. You know?
I love it though. I love it. Some of my skip, but I remember like Mean Hawkman. Remember how Mean Hawkman was on that? I loved it though.
The guy from Stargate, Michael Schiffman, I think his name is. I love Stargate, so I remember that.
He was so good. That show was so good though. It was like villain of the week, but it was still amazing.
Yeah, and I think Michael Rosenblum as Lex Luthor is so good, and he's a great Flash, by the way. You know, he did the animated stuff as the Flash. He was great.
He was. And seeing even Justin Hartley doing Green Arrow. Oh, so good. Now I want to watch Smallville.
Yeah, right?
Don't click away yet. Just know that part 2 is coming where we talk about Jeremy's animation titles. And if you made it this far, make sure you put #Flash in the comment section below so I know. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.